And I know, Alice, you brought up this issue of COVID-19 making things a little bit more complicated for all of us. I'm being very putting that lightly, but we all know that it's, for those of us who are used to building relationships, we know that has made our lives really difficult to try to figure out how to do that better. So in talking to Victoria, so Dr. Victoria Herrmann, that she mentioned, is the managing director for the Arctic Institute, and she has a new research coordination network through the Coastlines and People program at the National Science Foundation called Migrations in Harmony, right, Victoria? And so when I heard this, I thought this would be really interesting to learn more about, as if any of you are on some of the Arctic listservs or kind of Arctic social media, they've been doing a great job kind of pushing out lots of talks and building lots of networks. And it seems like they've been really successful so far in building a diverse network too. So I thought it would be great to hear from Victoria on both the kind of the project itself and also kind of how they've been building networks. And then, as many of you know, many of you are already involved in APECS and USAPECS, and they've been doing a lot of work in this space too. So with that, we thought it would be a really great conversation to hear from both of these groups and then discuss kind of what are some of the best practices for building collaborations, what can we do in these times of COVID, and anything else that might come up. So with that, Dr. Herrmann, I will hand it off to you so we can hear from you about your new project.
Awesome. Thank you, Colleen. Hey, everyone. Again, I am Victoria Herrmann, and today I am going to share a bit about the Migration in Harmony Research Coordination Network, which again is funded through the NSF Coastline and Peoples Program. But being in a virtual event, you kind of lose who you're talking to. So I figured I would just take a minute at the start to tell you who you are staring at for the next 20 minutes. So I am, in addition to being the PI of this network, also an early career Arctic folk. And I am a first generation college graduate in my family. And when I got to college, I thought, wow, this is a pretty cool opportunity to decide what you can do with your career. I was a bit overwhelmed, but I had this family foundation to go off of. And that was hearing stories from my grandparents who were Holocaust survivors, listening to my grandfather's survival story of Auschwitz concentration camp is a pretty good motivator to do something around human rights. And so I was on my way to majoring in international relations and art history because I love all things art, when I found out what climate change was, which was a huge shift in my life. So once I realized that climate change was the biggest human rights issue of our generation, I quickly shifted pathways to take as many courses as I could around climate, both policy and science, and also attended a few protests along the way. And through a winding journey that started in urban planning and climate mitigation in megacities to Arctic research, I continued this commitment of climate research, climate action, and ultimately bringing people together around understanding different facets of a rapidly changing planet and what we can do together to create a more sustainable and science-informed future. And this eventually led me to apply for an NSF grant to start a research coordination network. And I will explain about the network, kind of our challenges and opportunities around COVID, but for the early career folks on this call, I finished my PhD in 2019, and when I applied to this NSF grant, I was an adjunct professor at Georgetown University. It is a difficult navigation to figure out how to apply to an NSF grant if you're not, an assistant professor, if you don't have an easier pathway to enter as an early career researcher. So I'm also very open to having a conversation later on what that looks like, how to engage in the support that NSF provides and, other Arctic communities that can help along that pathway. So last year, I, along with many, many colleagues, put together this NSF application, and we were lucky enough to be successful to have a 3-year grant that began earlier this year on Arctic migrations. And the reason behind this was a personal one. I was engaged in Arctic research around climate-induced displacement, migration, and relocation. I focused on humans, settlements, cultural heritage, traditional knowledge, but I realized that this was only one part of an Arctic in motion, right? There were species ranges shifting, there were ecosystems shifting, there were economies shifting, migrant labor was shifting. There was a lot of movement happening in the Arctic, and I wasn't talking to any of those people about these movements. So our reason for creating this network is to hopefully create space to foster those type of conversations from different aspects of how the Arctic is moving from urbanization, globalization, and the impacts of climate change. And we tried to make this as accessible as possible, starting with who we were able to bring together for our steering committee. So there are 3 principal investigators of this grant: myself, my colleague, Dr. Chad Briggs at the University of Alaska, Anchorage, and Dr. Beth Ferris at Georgetown University. And we have 10 steering committee members, all of which come from different disciplines, traditional knowledge, but also practitioners, so fishermen, educators in Alaska. And we span the 8 Arctic nation states and indigenous nations. So we started with that as a foundation, but thought there is always room for more collaborations. So from the onset, we had 20 different collaborator networks, organizations, individuals, research institutions, schools that would help us spread the word and get more people to the table. And today we launched in May. So we are now a few months in, and we have a pretty awesome network so far. We have over 550 network members, and we are very much hoping to get as many more as we can. And those represent just over 50 countries, which is a pretty awesome catalyst for conversation in our webinars, with people having a really diverse background coming into conversations on Arctic migrations. And together with all of these network members and steering committee members, we're trying to do 4 big things, right? These are our 4 aims in the network. We're trying to communicate through open facilitation of communication and safe spaces to share information, share resources, especially for early career scholars and traditional knowledge holders, and bring people together through those more siloed disciplines and practices. We are hoping to integrate and synthesize current research initiatives of researchers, educators, engineers that are working independently on different aspects of Arctic migration so that we can have those conversations together. We hope to improve decision support for Arctic coastal residents, government agencies, and non-governmental organizations in responding to the consequences of changing migration patterns. And finally, we hope to nurture a sense of community within this global network by enhancing education, training and exchange opportunities for all members, from high school students to senior scholars. And we had an ambitious 3-year plan that was going to kick off with an in-person meeting in DC this year that got slightly derailed. So we are shifting to hopefully have our in-person meetings over the next 3 years. But this idea was that we can start really big with everyone part of the conversation to see all of the systems of Arctic migrations, to understand and synthesize what research was out there now, and to identify what we can do together, what gaps existed. And then the following year, to do a bit of human-centered design thinking and to have a more creative approach to an in-person meeting, and to identify gaps around collaborations in Arctic migrations by doing lots of visual mapping and sharing ideas. With that final year, really hoping to create lots of interdisciplinary and global research teams that could then apply for other research grants from NSF or elsewhere that were targeting those gaps in research, because this is just a coordination network. We are not doing any research on our own, but the hope is that by year 3, we have these awesome new teams and hopefully new friendships that can apply for grants. So you don't get that last minute email saying that I need a biologist to join my team. Will you please join it? Because we all know those, and hopefully this network provides a few more friends in different disciplines and across different countries so that you don't have to send those cold emails. And partly because I am early career, partly because I think this is pretty important. A lot of our programming is focused on early career support. And this has shifted a little bit because we are shifting our in-person meetings, but we thought about how to make use of the next 3 years of this grant. And we figured that it's good to be targeted and make use of our time wisely. So in the first year, we have a set of programs that we designed out around mentorship, how to be a good mentor for early and mid-career professionals and then senior professionals, how to find a good mentor for early career professionals, knowledge holders, and students, and what you should look for in that relationship. Once you have found a good mentor, how is that built out? And this is in partnership with the Wilson Center in DC from another program on women mentorship, primarily in the Middle East and Africa, that Sherry Goodman, one of our steering committee members, has been engaged with in taking some of those lessons learned and hopefully imparting those on our network members. In the second year, we wanted to focus on collaboration. How can other early career scholars do things like this, right? Bringing people together. What are the best practices for building those safe spaces for collaboration? How do you reach out to others that are just beyond your personal or professional network? And how to make sure that you are centering inclusivity and diversity throughout those collaborations. And then finally, in our third year, that would focus on communication. So how can early career scholars, knowledge holders, practitioners reach out to storytellers to elevate their work, whether that's filmmakers or photographers? And how do you effectively work with journalists and the media to share your research and share important findings? And that our third year was meant to be based in Stockholm in Sweden, and we were partnering with High North News and their network in Norway on how to build out effective communication relationships with the media to get your research findings to a broader audience. And hopefully, again, by the end of this third year, we are able to provide early career scholars with some tangible skill sets around communication, mentorship, and collaboration. And they're able to put that into action by being PIs on grants submitted in year 3. So our aim is to create these interdisciplinary teams and also to really elevate early career scholars within the network to feel supported to be a PI or a co-PI on that next grant in 2022 or 2023. And like I said, this is, our plan for the next 3 years, but we just got started this year during a global pandemic. So, maybe this is ambitious, or maybe this is just what we need to keep us motivated in an incredibly anxious time. So to finish off this presentation, I thought I'd share some creative ways that we've approached living in a virtual world where we can't have a kickoff meeting this year, and what we've done instead. So the first kind of priority that we put for ourselves was to build community, which is a bit hard when you've never met other network members, and there's probably not an opportunity to do so in person in the next 12 months. So we have done things like getting to know our members through member spotlights that we put in our monthly newsletters and we share on social media. So we ask our members to fill out 5 questions and share some photos about why they do what they do, who inspires them. And we put together get to know these different network member PDFs that we put up on our website and we share out with other network members. We also host webinars. So we just hosted our 10th webinar this past week on permafrost degradation. And these webinars are anywhere from 30 to 150 participants coming in from, I think now we have gotten every continent other than Antarctica to come into our webinars. And they are a chance to get to know each other, but also to highlight some of our collaborators. And they are pretty diverse topics. We have covered building empathy through creating virtual reality, from your research to permafrost degradation, to planned relocations, to how to effectively partner with educators. So in the next few weeks, we have a few more on public health impacts of wildfires, on borders and border issues in the Arctic, on Arctic architecture and the built environment, and on biodiversity conservation and the shared experience between Mexico and the Canadian Arctic. And in 2021, we will have a whole host of new webinars that hopefully all of you will come and join us in. But webinars are mostly one way and just a question and answer. So we also have some other opportunities to communicate and get to know your other network members, like Slack, where we have different channels for specific interests, but also things like humble brags on what you have accomplished in your life, or sharing pet pictures, to having these speed dating opportunities where you are prompted with questions about your favorite place on the planet and your favorite food, and getting to know network members beyond their work, one of which is coming up at the end of November. But we are also still committed to that knowledge sharing part, right? The actual research coordination. And that means that we have to make everyone's work more accessible to such a large and diverse network. One of the ways we do that is offer every network member the opportunity to be paired with a graphic designer to create an easy to understand infographic from one of their peer review papers. Here you see one from a peer review paper on changing demographics in the Arctic, and another on changes in the boreal ecosystem and fire frequency. And we have a few more on infectious disease and on public health that are coming out this month. We also create visual notes of every webinar that we have, and these are easy, low bandwidth downloads of all of the big points of that webinar. So if you don't want to listen to an hour-long recording, you just want the big ideas and takeaways from advocacy and coalition building or whale science and education in Alaska, we have these neat visual notes that you can download on our website and share, hopefully, with 10 of your friends and colleagues. And over the next year, we are thinking about how to create those synthesis reports of research that is currently happening in other networks that exist in Arctic migrations. We're preparing for a special journal issue in 2021, and we're thinking about the best way to write policy white papers for subnational leaders across the Arctic on Arctic migrations. And then the final piece that we have been working on over these first few months is creating education and outreach opportunities. The first of which I want to highlight is one that's coming up. The Arctic Winter College is a program that the Migration and Harmony Research Coordination Network is running alongside the Arctic Institute and the Ecologic Institute over 10 weeks, where we'll have seminars every Tuesday with different professionals, practitioners, scholars in the Arctic, and we will bring together 25 early career scholars and emerging leaders, traditional knowledge holders together to create a more intimate setting that is focused on dialogue and network building with those experts, practitioners, and senior scholars. And that opportunity is currently seeking applications. They are open until the end of November. So if you are early career and are interested in having interesting and intimate conversations with Arctic scholars and experts, please apply and let other early career folks know. We also have a partnership through one of our steering committee members with the CTEC program, which is a well-established and very successful science outreach program between Scripps Institute in California and a high school in Sitka, Alaska, that we are currently working on creating a how-to guide to set up this type of program of educators, scientists, outreach for other universities and high schools across the Arctic, so that you have at least a blueprint to start thinking about hands-on science outreach for high school students and how to effectively build a partnership with a high school educator. And finally, there is a hope that in-person meetings will happen in the not too distant future, and those will hopefully happen in Washington, DC, in Anchorage, Alaska, and in Stockholm, Sweden. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Colleen with a quick homework for everyone to please join our network if you have not already done so. We would love to have you. We would love to feature you in one of our Get to Know Our Network members and maybe feature you in a future webinar. So thank you so much for listening to my spiel, and I will hand it back over.
Thank you so much, Victoria. You guys have been really busy, especially given everything that's going on. I liked how you put it, this time of general anxiety with everything going on. It seems like you've been really quite productive, and it's really great to see all the things that you have been up to and really successful so far. So we have a couple of questions in the chat. Maybe we'll do one or two for you, and then we'll hear from Alex and Angela, and we can have a broader conversation. One of which is the plan to engage Indigenous people in the network and the plan to uplift the Indigenous voice. And then Meredith was wondering how the visual notes are captured as well.
Sure. So to the first question, we are doing that through our steering committee and our collaborators in terms of the plan to engage and reach out to Indigenous peoples, including Indigenous peoples across the Arctic. So our steering committee, we have Sami representatives that are planning for a few different events in early 2021. And then through our educator partnerships and coalition building in Alaska, and then in Northern Canada through a public health program that will launch in March that is targeted at Indigenous scholars and traditional knowledge holders in Northern Canada. And then how are we uplifting Indigenous voices? We're doing that through events like an event we held a week and a half ago on liberation, Indigenous sovereignty in partnership with the Anchorage Museum, where we had two great discussants from the Arctic Youth Network and Native Movement who were sharing their knowledge and experiences around Arctic migrations. And we have a few other of those events. And again, we capture those for low bandwidth options in the visual notes and also in the infographics. So there are a few different 2021 events that will target on this, but we have already ran one and we have one more coming up in December.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so I bet you a lot of people have a ton of questions, but I want to hear from Angela and Alex first, and then we can have a broader conversation about this too. So with that, Angela and Alex, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, Colleen. Thank you, Victoria. That was very interesting to hear about that project. So again, my name is Alex Tate. I am one of the co-leads for the Early Career Forum, and I'm also on the board of USAPECS. And so I just wanted to take a quick minute to very briefly introduce USAPECS for those of you who are early career, or if you work with early career people, so you can share this information. So this is just our website, and I wanted to highlight a few things that we do every year. In general, APEX is the larger international organization, and USAPEX, we are for the United States, and we really cater to all early career people. If you're a graduate student, undergraduate student, postdoc, professor, anything like that. And we try to have a lot of opportunities to connect early career people to funding positions or just other events that kind of help promote early career people. We do a yearly blog series. The one that we had last year was all about navigating your early career and beyond. And this year it's about science policy at the polls. We try to do webinars and also share webinars. So we've been able to share some of the ones through IARPIC that they put on to kind of help share with our network. We also do a Polar Film Festival every year, and AGU, we have a presence there as well. And so last year we kind of became more connected with IARPIC through this early career forum in an effort to try to help bridge some of those connections so that early career people can really take advantage of everything that there is that we offer. So we are always very eager and excited to work with different people and if you have ideas for how we can better support early career, if there are other resources that might be helpful, or if you want to contribute to a blog or a webinar or really anything, then we are definitely open to that. Angela, did you want to add anything else that I may have missed?
No, I think that's it. Thanks.
Awesome, thank you. So good, we have about 15 minutes or so for kind of a Q&A. So you can feel free to raise your hand in Zoom, in chat, speak up, feel free. I don't think we have anyone on the phone, right, Meredith? So I think we're okay there. Sorry, Meredith.
Just saying that's correct. No one is on.
Okay, thanks. And so I will kick it off. It seems like both USAPECS and Migration and Harmony are these really kind of well-established networks already. I know USAPECS has been around for a while, and Victoria, you've created this network within a couple of months. And I'm wondering kind of at the start, how you even started to build these relationships, how you tapped into these networks and built these projects and built these networks, and that seem to have quite a bit of momentum now.
I can jump in with a little history of USAPECS because in 2014, there were three, we'll say fledgling, but that's kind of a strong word, apex groups floating around the US, one in Alaska, one in the Northeast, and then the occasional person bubbling up in Colorado. And so at AGU in 2014, along with people calling in from all over the place, we consolidated everyone into a USAPECS that has been steadily gaining momentum, especially since we've kind of handed off the reins to Angela and everyone kind of new in the board that I am very excited to say I don't actually know anymore. So it feels well established now, but it was a pretty tenuous organization for some time.
I guess how we started reaching out to folks about the application was who I was talking to about human-induced, climate-induced human displacement, and starting from there in terms of who was working on Arctic migrations, and then both reaching out to friends and colleagues that I knew from other early career engagements. We have quite a few early career scholars on the steering committee, and also a call on social media to say that I was working on this application and anyone who was interested to get in touch with me. So I did not go the cold email route, but I did get connected with a bunch of people who I was not previously connected with from responding to just a post on social media saying that I was interested in this and in applying, and if anyone else was interested, then I would love to have a conversation with them.
Awesome, thank you. Any questions for Victoria or the USAPECS reps here? Thanks, Alice, for chiming in on the background to USAPECS. Okay, I have another question for you, Victoria, is as I talked about this a little bit in the chat, but I really liked your point about how difficult it was to become kind of a first-time NSFPI, especially kind of as an adjunct. When I became a NSFPI, I was a sophomore postdoc, didn't know where I was going to be living the next month, et cetera, and it was very stressful, as I'm sure your first submission was stressful too. And I'm wondering, I feel like we could probably hold a semester-long course on how to do this, but I'm wondering like what your one piece of advice would be for an early career person who's writing kind of one of these big collaborative NSF grants.
I would say maybe two pieces of advice. The first is be persistent, and that is a little, or depending on your personality, can be a little difficult. I have become less shy in the virtual world, but I am not the outgoing person that I present myself to be. But as someone who is not in a more traditional assistant professor position, that has access maybe to a grant office, I had to be quite persistent asking Georgetown University as an adjunct to allow me to submit through their office. And it was a lot of emails, a lot of questions, a lot of phone calls and in-person meetings on if it was even okay for me as an adjunct professor to put in an application and what that application would look like and what would happen if the grant was successful. Would I come onto faculty? Would I still be an adjunct professor? So there was overall a lot of persistence in just continuing to follow up and make sure that you have all the information that you need, because the NSF application itself is really rigorous and it takes a lot of time and energy. So making sure that you have the entry points and the support that you need through a nonprofit or a university to make that application. So it's not 2 weeks before and you're asking yourself, am I actually going to have access to their internal site to submit this? Be persistent upfront. And the second thing that I would suggest is do as much research as you can on successful and unsuccessful NSF proposals. I'm happy to share mine with others to see how we wrote it. I frantically Googled NSF proposals for other research coordination networks that were wildly different than the ones that we submitted, right? It was on desertification and it had nothing to do with us. It was on soil health, but it gave us a good understanding of how one writes in RCN and what we should really include in our application. So I would say, Google is one of your best friends. Other scholars who have had a successful NSF grant or other grants to see if you can have a chat with them or if you could see part of their proposal, because those were really invaluable as somebody who had never applied to NSF for anything before. And I was quite confused with, what exactly went in what section. So seeing examples, 2 big thumbs up.
Thanks. And since I'm biased, I'll also add to don't be scared to reach out to your NSF program officer either. We are great resources and we love talking to potential PIs and especially early career PIs because you all have really fresh ideas and it's really exciting to see those. And I will say, I also put my successful proposals online too so other people can see them. So I'm always happy to share my proposals that were awarded too, and they're a great resource. Any other questions? We have so many good people on that we can talk. So any other questions at all? Feel free to raise your hand or type something in the chat. Victoria, it seemed like you wanted to add one more point about your Indigenous engagement.
Yeah, I forgot to also mention that through one of our steering committee members, Dee Dee Bennett, who heads the NSF Includes Surge project for disaster response and recovery, minorities in disaster research. She has created a robust program of mentor and mentees for minority students in disaster research. And we have been and are continuing to work to replicate that and launch it in the in-person meeting next year. So we haven't done anything public with that yet, but we're working to build that out to specifically engage Indigenous early career scholars, practitioners, and knowledge holders that are interested in disaster research, response, and recovery.
Awesome, thank you. And I actually think I missed a question from Chelsea, one of the early career forum leads. I think she had to sign off, but she asked Victoria, will there be a platform or digital space for ECRs to access information and collaborate? I'm assuming Slack might be one of those venues. And could the IARPC Early Career Forum fill this gap or help in some way?
Yes to both. So yes, Slack is going to be and is our current platform for early career engagement. in part because it is beyond my technical capabilities to build out any other platform to have people exchange ideas and post things on the website. So Slack is the place that we are currently congregating. And absolutely, I think IRPIC and the Early Career Forum would be an awesome place to have people exchange resources and opportunities and engage beyond the Slack channel, because that's a bit limited.
Awesome. I'm laughing because us feds are not really allowed to use Slack, and I always complain about it in our federal meetings because Slack is such a nice venue and we're like stuck with Microsoft Teams or something like that. So I'm very jealous that you're able to engage Slack in your collaboration building. Any other questions at all, or any topics of conversation that people wanted to bring up?
If there's nothing else, I'll jump in. So we had planned on organizing a very interdisciplinary workshop on kind of coastal science and science adjacent issues around the next Arctic Science Summit week. We have funding to bring some early career researchers to it. However, given COVID and travel restrictions, it doesn't seem like we'll be able to run an in-person workshop. So we're looking at options right now, whether to try and do a virtual workshop or distribute that over a number of sessions over some period of time. And so I would love if anyone has any thoughts, if you have any ideas for how you would like to engage with other people working on coastal science, defined extraordinarily broadly. Any thoughts, any ideas, even if it's just like, I'm interested, keep in touch. Like, I would love to hear anyone's ideas.
Sorry, I'm trying to stay quiet because I know I talk a lot and I wanted to give other people an opportunity, but I would just say, yes, I'm interested, and I'm sure the Coastal Resilience team would be interested too. You should also feel free to use the IARPA Coastal Resilience kind of team page and post and try to get an idea. I'm looking at Liz and her website kind of magic, and I'm wondering if we could set up some kind of discussion or poll to make that happen too.
Yeah, Alice, if you want to follow up with me, I can help you with that. I'll throw my email in the chat.
Sounds great.
I wasn't planning on, but I could make a little announcement about some early career stuff.
Oh yes, Corey, thanks. Go for it.
I'm the liaison in Calgary for you guys who don't know, and I work for NSF, and we represent a lot of the NSF funded projects that go through the ARSLIS program, or the Arctic Research Logistics Support Contract, who Battelle ARO just took over. So this thing that I'm gonna mention is kind of geared towards the scientists that we serve, and actually, so I think some of you guys on the call are a part of some of those projects that we serve. But in the springtime, we're going to do a career fair, virtual career fair with a lot of the high schools in the Arctic, as well as the rural campuses and the Ilisagavik. We're just kind of formalizing the idea right now, but what it's going to be is just basically a couple of days of opportunity for scientists at all levels of their career, from early career, undergraduate, all the way up to the PI, and as well as individuals from the Arctic research support industry, because if you don't already know, there's a huge industry of supporting Arctic and polar research. So we're going to take people at different levels of the career, with good stories about their careers, and then have an opportunity to talk to high school students and young adults in the villages in the Arctic about careers in Arctic research, whether it be support or academic, or even just let them know how valuable their upbringing is. And and then a lot of the careers that are taking part, like pretty much in their backyard, and they could either be part of the support industry or be academics, and also how valuable they would be in the classrooms in the universities across the US. I know that people would just love to have them as a resource in their classroom. So we're going to try to relay that to kids in the Arctic. So, and maybe I'll reach out to USAPECS and as well as you, Victoria, with your network to see if you guys want to be involved, and that would be a easy way to engage youth, and we'll do all the organizing with the schools.
That would be great.
Thanks, Corey. That's awesome. So we are at 4 o'clock now, 4 o'clock Eastern at least, and my cat right behind me is getting impatient and apparently wants some attention. So I just wanted to say thank you to Alex and Angela and Victoria for coming and speaking to us about their network building. You are all up to super impressive work, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you all end up doing in the next couple of months and year, especially given everything that we're all going through right now. So have a good rest of your day, and looking forward to hearing more from you in the coming months. Bye, everyone.